So this new week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Explained, I'm going to combine two bits of news that we got really recently. Both things are kind of minor. I was originally thinking, oh, well, I just take two bits of news and like just film two videos and there I go, I've got 2 weeks sorted. But I feel like these are both two minor things that it would feel kind of cheap to not just put them in one video. Just to kind of give a run on what they are, there was an interview with Chloe Bennett recently for her new show Interior Chinatown, where she was actually straight up asked about her thoughts on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan base and if she thinks she'll be returning eventually as the character. And the second thing is Loki season 2 is coming out on physical media soon, which means we're getting all the deleted scenes and the special features. And in that, there is a deleted scene where Loki mentions an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. character. Well, he mentions a Marvel Comics character who in the MCU has only yet appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I'll discuss both of that. I'll go through all the Daisy Johnson stuff and then briefly mention the Loki stuff at the end. But first off, Chloe Bennett, who recently starred in the new show Interior Chinatown, like I mentioned, on Hulu on Disney Plus over here in Ireland, did an interview for the show where she briefly discussed what it feels like to be this long removed from the show and if she expects to ever reprise the role. She called out how passionate the fan base is and that despite it being years since the show ended, how vocal we still are, which I think, I'm part of a lot of like a nerdy show fandoms, like there's a lot of shows that I'm kind of still active on like Twitter or YouTube or whatever, and I do feel like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fan base is easily one of the most like serious in terms of keeping up with stuff once like after the show has ended. Like it feels like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans are still looking for videos based on the show or are still active on Twitter, stuff like that, which you don't get with a lot of shows. Like, what we're 4 years now since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended and the fans are still very active. Like a lot of shows that end, you don't get that with, like, 3-4 years after the show's ended, they're kind of starting to trickle off a little bit, that it's only really the huge diehards left still talking about the show. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the fan base is really vocal. Just think about Secret Invasion. Like, that was a new Marvel show starring Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury, and most of the comments on YouTube or replies on Twitter in relation to the trailers for that show were about where is Daisy? Like, when are you going to show Daisy? Even though she ended up not being in the show. And in this interview, Chloe Bennett even lightly alludes to that, where she says that Clark Gregg, who played Phil Coulson, called her up at one point and was like, "You're in this new Marvel project and you didn't tell me." And Chloe replied to him that, like, "I'm not in that show." Like, and that she said that she even had to check with her team and be like, "Am I in this Marvel show and I didn't know about it?" And they're like, "No, you're not in it." Like, that's crazy. I like to think that maybe my videos had somewhat of a role to play in people thinking that she was in fact in the show, because I was covering some of those rumors when they were very first coming out, and like one of my most viewed videos on the channel is me talking about the rumor that Daisy was going to be in Secret Invasion. So maybe my video was play Rona. I doubt it. 100% doubt it. But I think that's so interesting that, even Clark Gregg was like, "Chloe, are you in this?" And she was like, "No." But she finishes up the whole conversation by saying, "I don't think I'm done playing Daisy. That's not saying I know anything. I've never been approached to do anything. I just didn't feel like I'm done." So that's a really interesting quote. Now, obviously, this doesn't confirm anything, but I do think this shows a complete willingness and want for her personally to return to the character. Like the fact that other Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. cast members are contacting her and being like, "Oh wow, you're in a new Marvel show and you didn't tell me," and she's like, "No, sorry." Like, that shows how far even the rumors and the leaks, like, even if these rumors and leaks are fake, it shows how far they're traveling, and it shows that there's clearly a want for people to see these characters. Like, it's really reminiscent of like some of the early Born Again leaks that ended up not being true, where some of the very first Born Again leaks were including like Foggy and Karen in it, and then because those leaks and rumors were so prevalent and people were spreading them so much, they ended up bringing Karen and Foggy into the main show when they went back to redo it. Like, this feels like a similar thing where I think Marvel are definitely noticing that people are talking so much about seeing characters from the show again, such as Coulson, such as Daisy, such as Fitz, Simmons, such as whoever. And I've been saying for a while that I think Daredevil and Punisher returning is hopefully the first of this new era of older Marvel shows being revisited and returning. Like, they're seeing how this is sort of an untapped market to be able to bring in fans from all these shows, because there are a lot of Marvel fans who might have only watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and weren't really super into the movies, and I think, it's good to kind of get them involved in the new movies. I'll be honest though, I'm not 100% convinced that Chloe's quote here will amount to anything. Secret Wars is the obvious place for her to return, or for characters like Daisy to return, but those films are going to have their hands full with the amount of Marvel characters that they're going to be juggling just based off of old movies. I don't know if there's space necessarily for characters from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to appear there, or like to be involved in things like that. Especially when you're like, rumors saying that you're going to get Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Hugh Jackman and all of the old movie people back. It's like, I don't see a scenario where people like Chloe Bennett or Ian Cascader or Elizabeth Henstridge sort of being alongside them. The second topic I wanted to talk about concerns a recent Loki Season 2 deleted scene, and like I mentioned earlier, Loki Season 2 is hitting physical media this month, so the deleted scenes and the special features and stuff are starting to trickle out from Marvel, and in one deleted scene, Loki discusses people he's fought in the past. One of those people he mentions is Absorbing Man. Absorbing Man being one of the aliases of Carl Crusher Creel, who played a pretty big role in both Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seasons 2 and 5. Now in the comics, Absorbing Man has a bit of a history with Loki, so this is probably most likely a reference to that history, rather than directly the writers being like, let's put an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference in here. It's also super likely that the people writing this scene had no idea that the character had appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and were simply just drawing from comic book history. But let's, not discuss that for a second, discuss Creel in the MCU, because he already has a history in the MCU, being someone that Jack Murdock fought around the time of Daredevil Season 1's flashback. So he was mentioned briefly in Season 1 of Daredevil, and then it was sometime after these flashbacks that Carl gained the abilities that we see him have in S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2, before he ultimately gets wrapped up in the whole gravitonium problem in S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5. Nonetheless, this is a really cool reference. But what do you think? Is this our Carl Creel or our Absorbing Man that Loki's talking about? I guess technically it couldn't be, because Loki from Loki is already not the same version of Loki from the main MCU. It's like a very, very, very similar timeline that then diverges. But what do you think? Is he referencing a very similar or the same version of Absorbing Man, or do you think this is supposed to be a completely different character that is not Carl Creel and is somebody unrelated? Anyway, let me know how you felt about this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Explained. I'm actually trying to stick to a schedule for once. That's crazy. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. There's videos like this every single week. If you're not new, make sure to like and share, because that always is a huge help. Thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day.